Hey friends, this is Pastor Eric Krahansel, and I am excited that I'm able to come to you from Mexico. And I'm here with a friend of mine, Pastor Dan, and at the area gaze up on the screen. But we're going to do another episode of Refire as we talk about discipleship in small churches and what they look like. But we are actually right now in the Baptist Seminary in La Paz, which is a really near and dear place to many of us that have been here to serve. Of course, this was started by David and Joyce Reed, and currently Pastor Hernando continues to do the work here as well. But as we begin this, I'm excited that, Dan, thank you for being part of this. And as we talk about what it means to have, to do discipleship in smaller churches. And that really is, as I mentioned to Dan earlier before his comment was, that describes probably almost all our churches in APCOPAD. So that's why we're doing this, though. Like, how can we do effective discipleship in our churches? So, Dan, why don't you start and begin by telling us a little bit more about your church, which is GraceCrossing Community Church in Phoenixville.
GraceCrossing has been in Phoenixville for almost 200 years. And Phoenixville is a town right now of about 8,000 people, and it is one of the fastest growing towns in the state of Pennsylvania. Largely a magnet community for young adults who come to imbibe and to dine at our downtown establishments on Bridge Street. So we are a small church, probably on a good Sunday between 40 and 50 people, often less than that, but it is a very active church and one that I'm very proud to serve as pastor.
Yeah, that's great. So my son, as you just mentioned about Phoenixville, my son lives in Phoenixville, and it is a very much becoming a 20s and 30 something town. It's been like that for a while now, but yeah, so it's a lot of ministry opportunities there in that place. So I guess one of my questions, so what would you say spiritual growth looks like in your context? How would you describe it? If you were thinking, how can I describe this for my church? And maybe even talk about what's the makeup of your church a little more too.
Well, my church, like many American Baptist churches, is very top heavy with elderly people. We do have a few younger adults and children, but the backbone of the church is really those who are well over 60 years old. So to me, I would define spiritual growth with one word, and that is hunger. Hunger to learn and hunger to serve. I believe that really is what defines someone who is growing spiritually.
No, that's good. I was just thinking too, I'm thinking about my own church, and I'm realizing too that my own church, the makeup of my church is similar to what you're describing. And I think that's true for a lot of our congregations in APCOPAD. There's been a void, right? And so we have this other amount of people or group of people that are there's almost like a gap. There's these older, and then you get some other youngers in here. So, and I apologize for any sirens you might hear in the background, because we are literally outdoors doing this in the middle of town in La Paz, so which is cool. I guess one of the things that I know that we all struggle with is that question of how do we help people move beyond just being an attendee to being more of a devotion, more of a commitment, more of a longing to want to grow in their faith. Like what is it you've seen done over the years? It might not even necessarily be at GraceCrossing, but the idea that at your church now versus maybe what you've done in the past too.
I really think it has to do with relationships and mentoring, being in a symbiotic relationship with others that sort of activates it. I don't believe discipleship has ever been meant to be something academic. It's meant to be something life-changing and something that grows people through a process of relationship development.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I'm 100% on the idea of relationships, but that ties into something else, and that is the idea of community, right? How do we allow the community to have I don't know, almost like a natural development? Or what have you seen has been helpful in your community to grow those areas in the church?
Well, a lot depends on how you define community. If you define it as koinonia or charisma, the fellowship within the church, that is one thing. But in terms of, we often think of community as those that surround us, the community that surrounds us, and so there is, I think, a dichotomy there of interactive relationships with the community, finding ways to build connections, not only inside the church, but outside the church and outside the church's walls. It's a real balancing act.
Yeah, so and thinking about some of these questions about discipleship, to be more pointed questions, I should say, what's a way, maybe we'll do it 2 questions here. How have you identified and developed future disciple makers, not just disciples, like people that can, but let's back up to another question with that though. And that question is, what is the biggest obstacle you face in discipleship?
Apathy.
Okay. And that's why I went to that, because I thought you might go somewhere with that, because it's not just about, it's about making people beyond being disciples, but being disciple makers. So keep going. That's good.
Yeah. I think, studies have shown that while a lot of Christians seem to be upset with the resistance that folks have to the church and to the gospel message, our biggest problem is not resistance. Our problem is that most folks just don't care. People who don't know the Lord don't see the need to care. And so it is really incumbent on us to build connections with those people and to make the gospel relevant to them by bringing it to them in a genuine fashion, without any desire or any attempt to influence or to manipulate people, but rather just to genuinely interact with them and to share the light of Christ that shines from within us.
Have you, I know you said apathy, which I hear you. I think everybody who's watching this right now is thinking, yes, I understand that. Have you ever had, or do you have now, a discipleship plan in place, like where you're trying to intentionally move people through discipleship?
I think in a smaller church, it's very difficult to develop like a program of discipleship. I think you really have to work at it on a more of a one-to-one basis, and again, to really emphasize relationship development with people. So a lot of that can certainly happen and should certainly happen within small groups, but it also needs to happen one-on-one with folks. And I think that's where oftentimes we miss the boat, is that we focus so much on going to Bible studies and coming to church that we fail to be the church by having intimate one-on-one relationships and prayer partnerships and so forth.
Yeah, and that kind of leads to one of the questions I had for you was, knowing in a small church, everybody begins to know everybody's business. How do you have good, effective opportunities to teach in the moment, or to share in those moments of vulnerability, the opportunity for good discussions, even when it's in that, let's just say, in that aquarium of the small church, right? How do you deal with that?
Transparency, I think, and that, as far as I'm concerned, starts with the pastor. When we're willing to admit to one another what our struggles are, and not to just put up a facade that everything's always all right, but to make connections with one another where the struggles are happening, where recovery is happening, and to go beyond just saying, how you doing, to, hey, how are you doing? And maybe even to identify certain struggles that that one another are going through.
Yeah, and I think, you've already kind of answered some of those questions too about the idea of how do you actually end up balance structure with flexibility in discipleship by have those one-on-one conversations or have the one-on-one relationships. Building those relationships are so important. I guess one of my things, and I don't even know if you can quantify this, but I'll just ask, how do we begin to measure that those discipleship efforts have actually are working? I mean, I know in scripture, we could talk about, like, you bring a believer in, we could talk about the fact that they come to know Christ, right? Then they are to become there's supposed to show efforts in their fruits, the fruits of their labor, right? So yeah, I know that we can talk about it all the time. Like, we begin to see the fruits of their labor, but what does that practically mean to you? Like, where you see that in your church, small or big things, it doesn't matter.
I think it goes back again to hunger. It goes back to desire to grow deeper and to serve more and to be more effective. And I think really ultimately to reach others with the gospel. That is, I think I've seen described like as a base path in baseball. You're rounding third and heading for home. That is when you're making disciples. And so, really, there should be a goal of getting, beyond first base to second, and from second to third. And when you've gotten beyond third base, that's when your real focus is on bringing new people in.
Yeah, I think probably one of the fun things I've seen lately at my own church is that I have had new believers come to know Christ, be baptized, and they really have no idea what they're doing. But okay, example, you'll appreciate this. This is a good one. This gal last week was sharing with me that she's a friend of theirs who's really sick. I'm not gonna say names or anything, but it's really sick, really bad shape. She said to me as she's leaving church, she said, I had no idea what I was doing. I couldn't even figure out what I was doing, but I don't even know why I did it. But I asked if I could pray for him. I never ever did that before in my life. Immediately I was like, this is good. Like, things are happening. Like, the Spirit's working in her life. So again, I know what you're saying. It's like they begin to go deeper in things. They begin to become participatory in these kind of things that are super important in the life, in the body of the church. So okay, I'll ask the question. This one is one I'm always interested in hearing. How do you see your church size as an advantage or maybe a disadvantage?
It's hard to say one or the other. It's really both. It's an advantage in that it's not at all difficult to kind of feel the pulse of the church and know, what is, inspiring people and what is discouraging people. But obviously, it is a danger of stretching people too thin, burning them out, and obviously it also brings with it some financial limitations, and especially when it comes to trying to support facilities, older facilities that need a lot of care. And again, when we have elderly church members are not able to do as much as they used to do, and that creates its own problems. So,
which leads me to the question of, how do you do good discipleship when you have to start wearing many different hats? Because you're right, some of these folks just can't do these things that they're used to. So I know I've been the guy that has to clean up something, or I've been the guy that has to, like, make sure the lights are off or the things are locked up, or even honestly, I've been the guy who's unclogged the toilet. So what do you do with that? I mean, how do you roll with that?
Very much the same way that you are. I take out the trash at the church every week, help to clean up the bathrooms and the kitchen and other things that sometimes other people don't get to. A lot of it too is, I think, knowing who is capable and delegating to those folks. And a lot of times that's almost harder than doing it yourself, to make connections with people and say, hey, Somebody needs to pick up the mail this week, or somebody needs to mow the lawn this week. Are you available? But it's important that you do that so that everyone is sort of sharing in the effort and gaining ownership of the work.
Yeah, and I think one of the problems you probably incur, which I know there are many churches out there, a lot of people are doing a lot of the work. I mean, the majority, let's say 80% of your people are. This is kind of, the principle. It's usually like 20% of the people do 80% of the work, right? You might have that, but you might not. You might have it where it's like, I have this many people and everybody's pitching in, and it's a lot of work for everybody. So I guess when I think about that, I'm always thinking about how am I making sure people are not burning out?
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's an answer for that, but what do you say?
Well, I think, one of the things you need to do is instead of getting frustrated by the situation, ask yourself, okay, so who exactly do you feel is letting me down right now? Who exactly is not?
That way, yeah.
When you really have to identify, all right, what's the problem? A lot of times you find out there is no one, and so either I need to do it myself, or we need to hire somebody to do it. And really, you can only do that for so long before you lose critical mass and so forth. And so that's one of the struggles. But it really is a faith issue, because you can spend so much of your energy being frustrated and being anxious about what the future holds that you can miss the opportunities that are right here, right now, in front of you.
Yeah, and so actually, I'm going to jump into what I was going to talk to you about, because I know we're in the same LLC.
Mm-hmm.
I know you've had some hardships at the church, not including plowing. I won't go there, but all the snow we've had. But I know you've had some other individuals that have had some difficulties. You just asked for, like, what can I do? I guess where I want to just go with that is, I know that you and I are not experts in certain things. At what point have you said, I need to help you get better help? What's the point where you see like that line, the crossing of the line? But also, how have you seen that be a good opportunity to help people go deeper in their faith walk too, in the midst of their crisis, let's say?
Well, I think some of it is you have to explore what your options are in these situations, and help people to get on the same page about how to meet the challenges that are ahead of us. We see churches across the region right now that are coming to the conclusion that they can no longer afford a full-time seminary-trained pastor. And so that's one of the reasons why APCOPAD has developed the ACTS program, to help train pastors of smaller churches that perhaps can't afford seminary training and so forth, and equip them for ministry right now. I think you delegate where you can, and you obviously, part of our jobs as pastors is to equip people for ministry, and it's one of the fundamental building blocks of Baptist churches is the idea of the priesthood of all believers. And unfortunately, too many churches get involved in a blame game, because they look back on what the church used to be, and they long for it, and it is just not where the church is right now.
Yeah, and I would even offer up that we desire good solutions to things, right? Even in a church setting, we do want win-wins. We don't want win-lose or whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. And we have people who have gone through those tough times. And I will say this, for me, and I'm sure you've seen it over your years of ministry, that we have seen people we've tried to help them through something, but eventually they just walk away from church. They just leave. Even though we've bent over backwards sometimes to help them, and we've gone out of our way. We've actually helped support them financially. We've supported them emotionally. We've driven them to places to get help. And then 3 weeks later, they're like, they're gone, right? I don't know if I have a question for that, but I think you would agree with me.
I do, and I think Jesus dealt with that too, didn't he? People that walked away from him, and for us to expect anything differently is really sort of arrogant. Attrition is part of ministry, and I remember talking to another pastor one time about somebody who was not only leaving the church, but leaving the church with some of his people to start another church. And he said to me, I realized, God revealed to me, I could either bless it or curse it. And he said, I chose to bless it. And boy, there's not many of us that would do that. That's a hard thing to do. But, that church that has left is one of the few that I've seen, when you call it a church split or whatever you want to call it, it has thrived. And so ultimately we need to keep our eye on the big picture and what our ultimate goal is. And, before there can be a resurrection, there has to be a death.
Yeah, no, for sure. I want to switch gears just really quick because we're here in La Paz, right? How do you see, and Dan here is an expert on Uganda, but Dan's been in La Paz back in the 2010, 2012, whatever, 2014, when the David and Joyce Reed were here. But you've been to Uganda a lot. And so how do you see mission trips being a help in discipleship too? You know what I mean? Like you and I both would agree that that is something that is a positive thing, but how would you see that being valuable
there
as well?
Are so many different ways. I think especially among younger people, but really among everybody, the draw to, cross-cultural ministry is pretty profound. We live in an age where, we're connected with people all over the globe in ways that has never happened before. And I think it gives us a way to serve people who are obviously in many ways more disadvantaged than us, a way for us to capitalize on some of the things, the blessings that God has given us. But it is a very symbiotic thing, because I don't know of a single person that has gone on a short-term mission trip that hasn't come back being blessed by that experience and recognized that, boy, I wish that my church was as hungry as the church that I just served. It is one of the most striking things about going on in the mission field. It's the hunger for righteousness and for scriptural teaching.
Yeah, and I think we both just witnessed this with Pastor Juan Carlos, who is here, and his wife. You see the passion, right? You see what they want, and so that is so true, and that's why I love seeing people come with me here, and then they go back to their churches and they're just fired up. They're ready to go. They're tired, they're exhausted, right? But they want to make a difference in the Life Church. I know when I picked up people from the airport from Uganda, I thought I was going to have a quiet van ride back, but I didn't.
We've been up for 24 hours.
Oh, I know that. That's why I thought you would be not. I thought everybody would be like, I'm sleeping. But I didn't. I ended up getting an earful, a good earful, by the way, about their experience and how exciting it was and how much they look forward to what they're going to learn from it, but also going back again. So I thought that was so wow. So exactly what, we see. And so it's just, so good.
We started off talking about apathy.
Yeah.
And how that's the most frustrating thing about ministry today. We just don't see that in third world countries.
It's not there.
They are.
Well, let me say this. We do see, there are pieces of it, but it seems like it's not within the congregations, right? So, yeah.
Well, just the vitality of their worship.
Yeah.
I mean, we have, electric guitars and electronic organs and all of these things that they don't have over there. But we also don't have the joy.
No, I hear you. I think there's something even about when we were in the church service this week in a very small room, and I still can't figure out why they have the music so loud, but that doesn't matter. But anyways, you could just hear it in their voices. Like they were just so excited to sing, to praise God through that too. So Yeah, and I think there's some truth behind firing people up for ministry, firing them up as disciples, right? And I would say to every church that's in APCOPAD right now, find a way. If you can do a mission trip, it doesn't have to be what we're doing internationally. You don't have to go to Uganda. You don't have to go to Mexico. But there are other opportunities, and I think that is a key player. It's a player, not all of it, but it's a key player in developing our discipleship too.
Amen.
So, yeah. So Dan, thank you for being a part of this. I appreciate it. And I will say this to everybody that is watching. I want to say thank you for being a part of this and checking out another episode of Fire as we talk about discipleship in small churches across APCOPAD. Take care and blessings to you on this day. Bye-bye.
Yeah.